This thing does not yet live on the internet, though. We haven't hosted it anywhere. And hosting it in GitHub Pages is a possibility, but kind of a pain in the neck in this case. We happen to already be using Firebase, and guess what? Firebase, among its many other services, has not just authentication of database and storage, but hosting. So let's use Firebase hosting for our project, and let's get it up there on the actual web. Piece of cake. Okay, well, it's not too bad. The Create React app user guide I've mentioned before tells you how to do a whole bunch of stuff with apps that you've created with Create React app. And deployment is no exception. If you look at the README for Create React app, scroll down in the table of contents here, you'll see deployment near the bottom, third from the bottom. And it tells you how to deploy to a variety of services, including GitHub Pages. So if you do want to do that, this will tell you how to do it. One thing it says at the very beginning of deployment is npm run build, or yarn build, creates a build directory with a production build of your app. Let's see what happens if we do that. Let's look at our list of directories here. We don't have a build directory, do we? We have node modules, public, and source. If we run yarn build, then we get a build directory. If you did try to deploy this to GitHub Pages earlier, what you probably noticed is you just got the README. Because as you may recall, we're not writing real JavaScript. We're writing JSX, which has to be turned into real JavaScript. So our dev server has been doing that for us in the background all along. As we write, it just keeps a compiled version of the app going every time we make a change to any file. But to actually copy this to a web server, we need to actually make a build of the app. That's what yarn build does. That makes this folder. So you could copy this folder to any like traditional static web hosting server, and it would work. So you've got your actual index.html here. In this static folder, you've got your actual JavaScript. Notice there's a single JavaScript file. That's all of the JavaScript we've written compressed into one big, pretty much unreadable file. So that's all the JavaScript that was created from all our JSX in all of our files, including everything we imported from our node modules. So this is all the JavaScript that it needs in a single file. So that's something else that the build process does. So that's what we need to actually copy to a web server. But we're not going to just copy it to a static server. We're going to use Firebase. So if you look through this table of contents here, you'll see how to host it on different services, including, yes, dear old Firebase. So here's a link straight to the section of the README that covers Firebase hosting. First, we need to install the Firebase command line interface by running npm install -g Firebase Tools. Let's do that. npm install -g Firebase Tools. I just pasted that command in Slack. So the Firebase tools let you do some other stuff with Firebase that are not related to a specific project necessarily. They let you do things like deploy and manage your database rules and all that kind of stuff. So it gives you these tools that you can run from any folder. I mean, npm install -g Firebase Tools. And then we just need to follow these steps. But follow them carefully. I'll walk through them. In the folder where your project lives, in your chattering folder, run Firebase init. It'll ask you which Firebase CLI features do you want to set up for this folder. You can use your up and down arrows and then the space bar to select things. We just want hosting. Just hosting. Then you can associate it with a particular Firebase project. Pick the one you've already created. So I want chat S3 morning. There we go. Then it'll ask which folder do you want to use as your public directory. It will default to public. That is not what we want. We want build. So we actually have to type build. Very important. Configure as a single page app? Yes, we do want to do that. Index.html is our one true HTML file. File build/index.html already exists. Overwrite? No. We want the one that we built. So leave that alone. And that's it. It'll create Firebase JSON and .firebase RC. 2 new files with our Firebase configuration. So that's how we set it up. Then reading these instructions from the README, see a couple other things we need to do. It wants us to make a small change to firebase.json. Firebase init doesn't do this for us because this is specific to React, and it doesn't know that we're using React. So you'll notice there's an object here for hosting. We need to add a new key to that, a key called headers. So copy that, and after this array here, still inside that object, paste that. So when you're done, your firebase.json should look exactly like what I'm pasting into Slack right now. This is important so that old versions of this do not get cached when you deploy new versions. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself crazy saying, I swear I made the changes and I pushed it, but I'm not seeing it. That's because of caching, and this will take care of that for you. Now, anytime we run yarn build, remember yarn build compiles all of our JavaScript into the build directory. After we do that, we can then run we can run Firebase Deploy. So yarn build, Firebase Deploy. And if all is well, it'll tell you what URL it's at. I'm going to copy that URL. I think Firebase Open might open it in the browser automatically. Is that right? Firebase Open? Yeah, never mind. I think it with a menu there you could. But I'm just going to copy that URL out of there, open it in the browser, and see if it works. Looks like it. Don't forget to have your DevTools open, because you might have an error message if something's not working. Make sure you check what that error message is. That will give you a clue. Let's see if it works. Let's see if I can actually sign in. Can I sign in with Google? Looks like I can, and I even get my same messages back. Can I sign in with GitHub? Looks like I can. It's on the real web now. Yeah, and it's working. So since that works, back in my GitHub, I'm going to paste in that URL under website. Don't forget to do this so people can actually see your app running. Et voila. Beautiful. It's hosted on the real web. Remember, if you forget what that is, on your GitHub repository, just hit edit. You can put in a description. Final project for Extern Bootcamp 2018. Paste in the website that you get when you run Firebase Deploy. So keep in mind, this does not get redeployed automatically every time you make changes. You have to actually do it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and commit this Firebase config here. Add Firebase hosting. Actually, I'm going to change one more thing before I do that. So whenever you want to deploy, you need to run yarn build to actually compile your JavaScript, and Firebase Deploy to deploy the thing. Or you could update package.json with new scripts. So everything you type, yarn whatever, yarn build, yarn start, that stuff works because of these commands in package.json. So let's just add a new one. Add a comma after eject here, and let's add deploy. And let's make that run Firebase Deploy. Here's another cool trick. If you put in another one called pre-deploy, that will run automatically every time you deploy. So if I put yarn build there, what'll happen is every time I run yarn deploy, it'll automatically run yarn build, then Firebase Deploy. So we can do it in one step. So those are the two things you have to do. You have to run yarn build to actually compile your JavaScript, and then Firebase Deploy to copy it to Firebase. But if we put them in our package.json like this, then we can reduce it to one step. Just yarn deploy, which will automatically run pre-deploy for the build, and Firebase Deploy for the deploy. Let's try it out. Yarn deploy. And we see it runs yarn build automatically. All right, one more thing. Look at the output of yarn build. This project was built assuming it was hosted at the server root, which it is. But you can control this with the homepage field in your package.json. Homepage field in our package.json doesn't sound like a bad idea. Let's do that. Right after name, I'll put homepage. And in there, I'll paste the URL of my Firebase app. It's working okay without that, but nice to have. Add Firebase hosting config. And now you should have it hosted on the actual web. Questions about that, about Firebase hosting? Don't forget, you can always find these steps again if you don't remember them in the Create React App README. If you want to host it somewhere else, you can find instructions there for a lot of different things. Don't forget that it's there. I did just paste this in Slack as well. But please don't forget, you can find this information even without me up here telling it to you. Don't forget to check the website for links.